She never thought a single choice could change her life forever. Yet here she was, sitting at the wrong table in the middle of Seoul's busiest district, staring straight into the eyes of a man who could have ended lives with a single gesture. The moment she realized the seat she had taken was reserved, it was too late. "You this seat," a deep, cold voice said, and her stomach dropped as the full weight of the situation hit her. She had no idea that by choosing a table nearest to the window, she had accidentally walked into the orbit of Bose, a man whispered about in every dark alley, feared by every powerful family, and idolized by those who were foolish enough to think they could understand him. His reputation preceded him: ruthless, cunning, and terrifyingly charming. And now he was staring at her as if trying to decide whether she was a pawn or a threat. Ngozi's mind raced. This can't be happening, she thought, gripping her bag tightly against her chest. She was supposed to meet a recruiter for a marketing job she'd been dreaming about since leaving the UK. Instead, she was facing a man whose very presence made the air feel heavier, more dangerous. She noticed the faint scar on his jaw, the way his eyes seemed to scan her like a predator calculating whether she was prey. The irony was brutal. She had moved halfway across the world to chase freedom and independence, and now she felt smaller than she ever had in her life. Bose leaned forward, his hand brushing against the polished table, and Ngozi could feel the subtle tremor of intimidation mixed with curiosity. "You're brave or foolish," he said, his English accented but clear. "Do you know whose table this is?" I didn't," she stammered, trying to sound confident. "I swear I thought it was free." He raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "You thought wrong." Her pulse spiked, and she tried to make her voice steady. "Well, maybe I can buy a coffee instead and move." "No," he said simply, his eyes locking onto hers with a focus that made her stomach clench. I want to see why you sat here in my place, in my city, in my life." Something inside her twisted. There was danger in his words, yes, but also a pull she couldn't understand. Maybe it was the way his aura seemed to dominate the room, or maybe it was the thrill of standing on the edge of something forbidden. She sat, hesitating only a moment longer, and he didn't object. "Why are you here?" he asked finally, his tone softening slightly, like a predator curious about the tiniest detail of its prey. I came for a job," she admitted, the words tasting weak in her mouth. "Marketing. I just moved here from London." His smirk widened. "So, a foreign girl chasing dreams in my city. That explains the bravery. Or the foolishness. I'll decide which later." Ngozi swallowed hard. His presence was suffocating, magnetic, overwhelming. She could feel herself being drawn into a current she didn't understand but couldn't resist. And for some irrational reason, she found herself telling the truth, more than she usually would with strangers. "I've worked hard all my life," she said quietly. "I came here to find opportunities. I'm not here to cause trouble." "Opportunities," Bose repeated, leaning back slightly, his gaze sharp. "You think this city gives opportunities? Takes, consumes. You either survive or you disappear." A shiver ran down her spine. His words were terrifying but thrilling. She felt a strange mixture of fear and curiosity gnawing at her. This man, dangerous and enigmatic, seemed to see straight through her. And for reasons she didn't understand, she wanted him to see more. "I can survive," she whispered almost to herself, and when he heard it, his smirk became a full smile, brief and knowing. "Interesting," he said, voice low and deliberate. "Very interesting." He gestured at the chair across from him. "Sit properly. You'll need it." She did, heart pounding. She didn't know why she trusted him, but there was something in the way he looked at her, like he could see the entire map of her fears and desires laid bare, that demanded attention. And maybe that was the first dangerous pull, the awareness that she was utterly unprepared for what this man could mean in her life. Before she could even process it, his phone rang. The tone was sharp, almost militaristic, and he answered without hesitation. She couldn't make out the words, but the intensity of the conversation left her frozen. Every now and then, His voice would drop to a menacing calm, the kind that made people hang on every syllable. And then abruptly he hung up, eyes flicking back to her. "Business calls," he said simply, as if that explained everything. "Don't worry about it. You won't survive in my world if you don't understand that danger is always present, even in silence." Her chest tightened. "Your world?" she echoed, curiosity and fear intertwining. "Yes," he said, voice dropping even lower. "And for reasons I can't explain. You're part of it now." The words struck her like a lightning bolt. Part of his world. What could that possibly mean? She didn't even know him, and yet the weight of his statement pressed on her chest. What do you want from me?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though her hands trembled on the table. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing in a way that sent chills down her spine. "I want to see how far you can go. I want to see if you're brave enough to survive. If you're foolish enough to take risks. And I want to know if you're willing to follow me, even into darkness." A shiver ran through her body. Something inside her stirred a mix of fear, desire, and a dangerous curiosity. She didn't know why, but she wanted to know more. She wanted to understand this man. She wanted to survive his world. And somewhere deep down, a voice whispered, almost with excitement, "Maybe I could lose myself in this chaos. Maybe I could be more than who I am. Maybe I could even become his." She didn't realize it yet, but that single choice to sit at the wrong table, to engage with a man whose name could ruin lives, had sealed her fate. In the darkest corners of Seoul, where the streets whispered of power, death, and secrets no one dared speak aloud, Ngozi had just stepped into a storm from which there would be no turning back. Ngozi's hands shook slightly as she wrapped them around her coffee cup, though the steam did little to calm the storm inside her. The cafe, once bustling, now seemed smaller, almost claustrophobic, as if every patron had disappeared except for her and Bose. She tried to steady her breathing, but the weight of his gaze pinned her in place, like a trap she couldn't escape. "You think this is a game?" Bose asked suddenly, his voice low but sharp, cutting through her thoughts. "Do you have any idea what kind of people you're sitting near? Or the kind of danger you just invited into your life?" I just," she started, then stopped, realizing she had no idea what to say. Her mind scrambled for an explanation that sounded rational. "I didn't know," she admitted, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. "I was just trying to find a seat." He studied her for a long moment, eyes dark and calculating. "And yet you sat, without hesitation, curious, reckless, or naive." His smirk returned, sharper this time, like a knife pressed against her chest. "I like that. Most people wouldn't survive 5 minutes in my presence without breaking." Her stomach twisted. "Survive?" she repeated, trying not to let her panic show. "Are you dangerous?" Bose's lips curved into a grin, just enough to make her skin crawl. "Dangerous?" he echoed, leaning closer across the table. "That's just one word for it. You, however, might be more dangerous than you think." She blinked, unsure if it was a threat or something else entirely. "Me?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "How? I'm just a girl who moved here to work." He leaned back slightly, as if amused by her audacity. "Yes, exactly. That makes you interesting. You're untarnished. You're not yet compromised by fear, greed, or desire. Well, maybe a little desire. But you haven't learned the rules yet. And that makes you fun to watch." A shiver ran down her spine. She hated how her pulse quickened at his words, hated the thrill that surged through her chest. "Fun to watch," she repeated, trying to keep her voice steady. "I don't even know your name." "I am Bose," he said simply, as though the name alone carried weight beyond comprehension. "You will learn it soon enough." The cafe door opened, letting in a rush of cold February air, and Bose's expression didn't change. He barely glanced toward the newcomer. His attention was fixed on her, and it unnerved her. He was the kind of man who didn't just occupy a space. He owned it. And now he seemed intent on owning her attention as well. I need to focus on my job, she said finally, trying to inject some authority into her tone. I have an interview in 30 minutes, and I can't be late. He smiled, slow and deliberate. Ah, the ambitious foreign girl, he murmured. You're polite. You're determined. But you're also in my city now. My rules apply whether you like it or not. And right now, your interview is insignificant compared to the lesson I plan to teach you. Her heart skipped a beat. Lesson? She asked, feeling both terrified and inexplicably drawn toward him. What kind of lesson? The kind you don't see coming, he said, eyes glinting like steel. The kind that makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. And about people. She wanted to laugh nervously, wanted to tell herself she was imagining it all. But the intensity in his eyes, the way his hand brushed the table, the subtle twitch in his jaw, told her otherwise. This man was not someone to underestimate. And yet, a dangerous part of her mind whispered that maybe. She wanted him to test her. You talk a lot, she said, trying to regain some sense of control, though her voice trembled despite her effort. Most people don't even introduce themselves this way. They just what? He interrupted, leaning forward again, eyes narrowing, voice low and smooth, almost a whisper. They just fall in line, obey, pretend and survive. Yes, I know. But you're different. You don't pretend. And that terrifies me. Her chest tightened, and she could feel a flush creeping across her cheeks. Terrifies you, she echoed, unable to hide the tremor in her voice. How? Because I don't know what you'll do next, he admitted, surprising her with the honesty of it. You're unpredictable. And unpredictable things break routines, destroy plans, expose weaknesses. Nay, I like seeing that. For a moment, she felt like she had stepped into a dream she couldn't wake from. Every nerve in her body screamed danger, yet every heartbeat seemed to pull her closer. I'm not here to cause trouble, she said quietly, almost pleading. You just exist, he interrupted softly, leaning back, letting the silence hang heavy between them. And existing in my world is a choice. Dangerous choice. Do you know what you've chosen? Her stomach twisted. I don't know, she admitted. I thought. I was just sitting. Bose's grin returned, full and knowing. Exactly. And that's why you're fascinating. You made a choice without realizing it. Most people don't even notice the traps they step into until it's too late. But you notice and yet you stay. That makes you bold, foolish, or perhaps worthy. Her pulse raced, and she felt the weight of the words pressing on her chest. Worthy of what? She asked, voice barely audible, heart hammering. He leaned in slightly, eyes never leaving hers, and spoke like a secret meant only for her. Worthy of surviving this city, and perhaps surviving me. The words sent a thrill through her, and she had to fight the urge to shiver visibly. Something about him was intoxicating. Something about the danger in his presence called to her in a way she had never felt before. And even as fear tightened its grip around her, a part of her heart whispered, maybe I want this. Maybe I'm ready for this. Bose's hand brushed against the edge of the table again, deliberate and slow, and for the first time she felt that he wasn't just assessing her. He was testing her. And with a single glance, he made her realize that her life in Seoul, the independence she had fought for, and the dreams she had chased, had all led to this moment. She wanted to ask a question, to demand answers, to pull back. Instead, the words that left her lips were quiet, almost involuntary. What do you want from me? Bose's eyes darkened, and the smile disappeared, replaced by something sharper, colder, yet undeniably magnetic. I want to see how far you'll go, he said. I want to see if you can survive the darkness without losing yourself. And I want to see if you'll surrender to it when it calls. Ngozi's throat went dry. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. For reasons she could not explain, she nodded slightly, though she had no idea what she was agreeing to. And in that moment, something irrevocable had shifted. She had stepped into a world she didn't understand, with a man she couldn't resist, and there was no turning back. The cafe door slammed open again, and the wind carried in a chill that seemed to whisper promises of danger, excitement, and inevitable chaos. She looked at him, and in that instant she knew. Her life would never be the same. The next day, Ngozi couldn't stop thinking about him. Every street corner, every honking car, every passing stranger seemed to carry echoes of his presence. She tried to focus on her interview, on her dreams of a new life in Seoul, but his words, "worthy of surviving me," reverberated in her mind. She had never met anyone like him. No one who made her heart race with fear and curiosity in the same heartbeat. The recruiter's office was a blur. Questions about experience, skills, and career ambitions barely registered as Ngozi nodded and smiled, all the while replaying the sharp glint in Bose's eyes. And then, just as she thought she could leave the moment behind, her phone buzzed. A message appeared, one line, no sender name, only the words, "Meet me tonight. Cafe where we met." Her fingers froze on the screen. He knows where I live, she thought. But beneath the fear, there was a thrill she couldn't deny. She typed back nervously, "Why?" The reply was instant. "Because it's not safe to ignore opportunities." That night, the cafe was nearly empty. The dim lights reflected in the polished wood, and the scent of coffee mingled with the faint tension in the air. Bose was there, as if he had always belonged, leaning casually against the table. The moment she walked in, his eyes locked onto hers, and she felt a shiver run through her body. "You came," he said simply, voice low, like a promise or a warning. Yes," she stammered, trying to sound composed but failing. Her pulse pounded so loudly she was certain he could hear it. Why did you want me to come?" He leaned back, eyes scanning her face, expression unreadable. "Because you need to understand the rules here," he said. "This city, my world, they are not forgiving. People take what they want and they leave nothing behind. You are standing at the edge of something far bigger than your ambitions, Ngozi. And you don't even know it yet." She swallowed hard. I don't understand." "That's the point," he said, smiling faintly. "Understanding comes later. Surviving comes first. And tonight you will learn the first lesson." Her stomach twisted. "Lesson," she repeated, the word heavy in her throat. I was just meeting you." Bose leaned forward, elbows on the table, his gaze piercing. "Most people think they are prepared until they aren't. You are not like most people. That is why you are here. That is why you survived sitting at the wrong table yesterday. And that is why I am curious. How far you can go when the world turns against you." A tense silence fell between them. Ngozi wanted to leave, wanted to run, but something kept her rooted. The dangerous pull was too strong, the curiosity too consuming. She realized, with a mixture of fear and desire, that she wanted to know this man, to test herself against him, to see if she could survive whatever he represented. "Okay," she said finally, her voice trembling but firm. "I'll listen. I'll learn. But I don't even know who you are really. I don't know what you want from me." Bose's eyes softened briefly, almost imperceptibly. "What I want," he said slowly, "is someone unafraid of the shadows. Someone who will not flinch when confronted with danger. Someone who will stand when others fall. I want to see if you can keep your mind, your heart, and your courage intact. That's all. And perhaps," he paused, his lips twitching into a faint, almost private smile, "perhaps I want to see if you can handle the darkness in me." Her chest tightened, and she realized her heart was racing in a way that was not just fear, but something more primal, more complicated. "Darkness in you," she repeated, feeling a mix of dread and curiosity. "What does that even mean?" Bose didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid a small envelope across the table toward her. The paper was thick, expensive, and ominously heavy. She hesitated, then picked it up. Inside was a single photograph. A crowded room, dimly lit, with men in suits who looked more like predators than businessmen. One man in particular stood out, seated at the center, calm, dangerous, authoritative. And then she saw the faint outline of another figure. Her name scribbled hastily at the bottom. Ngozi. Her hands shook. What is this?" she whispered, looking up at him. "That," he said softly, "is your introduction to my world. Consider it a preview. You can leave now if you wish." Most people would. Most people would never come back after seeing it. She felt the weight of the photograph in her hand, and a sudden wave of panic washed over her. Her mind screamed at her to leave, to run as far away as possible. But then, curiosity, defiance, and something else, a strange pull she couldn't explain, kept her seated. I want to stay," she said, her voice barely audible but resolute. Bose leaned back, eyes dark and calculating, and smiled faintly. "Good. That is the first quality of someone who might survive. Curiosity, courage, foolishness, or all three. You will need them, because the next steps will not be easy. And mistakes," he let the word linger, heavy and dangerous, "will be costly." Her heart hammered. "Costly how?" "Life-changing," he said simply, voice low, deliberate. "You are no longer just a girl chasing a career. You are a player in a game you didn't even know existed. And by sitting at the wrong table, by daring to stay, you have already stepped onto the board. Every move you make from here matters." Her hands gripped the edge of the table as the reality of his words sank in. I don't know if I can do this," she admitted, voice trembling. "I'm just me. I don't belong in whatever this is." Bose's gaze softened, but only slightly, enough to unsettle her. "You belong more than you think," he said. "But you will have to prove it. Starting now." A sudden vibration from his phone cut through the tension. He glanced at it, expression unreadable, and then back at her. "They are waiting," he said simply. "And so are you. Do not be late." Ngozi felt her pulse spike. "Waiting where? For what?" "That," he said, standing and extending a hand toward her. "You will see. But be warned, once you step into this, there is no turning back. You will witness things most people can't even imagine. And some, you will wish you hadn't." Her mind screamed at her to refuse, to run, to escape. But she found herself taking his hand, drawn by something she couldn't name, something terrifying and irresistible. I'm ready," she said, though a part of her screamed in protest. Bose's eyes narrowed slightly, a faint, approving smirk crossing his lips. "We shall see," he said simply. "We shall see." And with that, he led her into the darkened streets of Seoul, toward a night that would change her forever. The streets of Seoul had never felt colder, darker, or more alive. The neon signs flickered overhead like warnings, and the rain-slicked pavement reflected the chaotic glow of the city. Bose walked beside her with a calm confidence that made her heart pound in rhythm with her fear. Every step she took felt like stepping closer to a precipice she couldn't see the bottom of. "Where are we going?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "You'll see soon enough," he said, eyes forward, expression unreadable. "Patience is part of survival. Learn it, or you'll fail before you even begin." She shivered, not just from the cold. Something in his tone carried danger, authority, and a subtle hint of intrigue. "Fail at what?" Bose glanced at her briefly, one eyebrow raised. "At life in my world. At understanding what it means to exist here. And at understanding me." Her stomach twisted. "You make it sound like I'm walking into a war zone." "In a way," he admitted, voice low, almost a whisper. "This world doesn't forgive mistakes. People are punished for weakness, for curiosity, for hesitation. And you've already drawn attention." The words sent a jolt of fear through her. "Attention? From whom?" He didn't answer immediately, instead slowing their pace as they turned down a narrow alley, shadowed and nearly empty. The air smelled faintly of wet concrete and something metallic. She wanted to turn back, to run, but the magnetic pull of his presence held her in place. She realized, with a mixture of terror and fascination, that she wanted him to lead her into this unknown. As they reached the end of the alley, a heavy black car waited, engine humming softly. Two men in suits, expressionless and sharp-eyed, stood beside it. They didn't move as Bose approached, their deference absolute, and she realized that they were not ordinary bodyguards. They were something else, something trained, dangerous. "Get in," Bose commanded, opening the rear door. Her hands trembled as she slid into the seat. The interior smelled of leather and faint cologne, cold but comforting in a strange, unsettling way. She could feel the eyes of the men outside, watching, judging, assessing. Every instinct screamed that she was in over her head. Yet another voice whispered that she had wanted this, that she had chosen it the moment she had stayed at the wrong table. The car moved, silent but deliberate, weaving through the narrow streets like a shadow. Bose sat beside her, calm and composed, his gaze occasionally flicking to her, assessing her reaction. "You're quiet," he observed, voice low. "Most people would be panicking right now. You are thinking too much. Or perhaps, not enough." I don't know what to think," she admitted, voice barely audible. "I'm just scared." "Good," he said, almost approvingly. "Fear keeps you alive, sharpens the mind. But it also has a weakness." "What weakness?" she asked, her pulse quickening. "Curiosity," he said softly, leaning closer so his words brushed against her ear. "It makes you vulnerable, but it also makes you interesting." Her cheeks flushed at the proximity, the intensity, and the weight of his words. She didn't know if she was terrified, intrigued, or both. "Interesting, why me?" she whispered. He studied her silently for a moment, eyes dark and calculating. "Because you didn't run. Because you didn't flinch. Because even now, as fear courses through you, you follow. Most people would scream, fight, or collapse. Do you stay? That is rare. And rare things are valuable." The car stopped abruptly in front of an unassuming building, one that looked ordinary from the outside but radiated a silent, menacing power. Bose stepped out and she followed, heart hammering in her chest. The two men in suits flanked them, silent and imposing. Inside, the air was thick, heavy with the scent of cigars and polished wood. The lighting was dim, strategic, making every shadow seem alive. A dozen men sat around a long table, eyes sharp, movements controlled, as if every breath was calculated. At the head of the table, a man, older, powerful, with a presence that demanded attention, looked up as they entered. Bose stopped a few steps away, and she instinctively held back, sensing the tension. The men's gaze shifted to her, sharp, evaluating, measuring. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and small. Yet there was a strange thrill that coursed through her veins. "This is," she whispered to Bose, voice trembling. "My world," he said simply, eyes flicking to hers. "And you are part of it now. Whether you like it or not." The man at the head of the table spoke, voice smooth, controlled. "Bose, you've brought the girl." Bose nodded once. "Yes." She stayed. She followed. "That alone makes her remarkable." The older man's gaze shifted to her, and she could feel the weight of it, a heavy, dangerous evaluation. "Ngozi," he said, as if testing her name on his tongue. "You understand the risks of being here." She swallowed hard. I think so," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "You think," he repeated, sharp but not unkind. "In this world, thinking isn't enough. You must act. You must endure. You must survive. And survival comes at a price." Bose's hand brushed lightly against hers under the table, a subtle, grounding touch. Her pulse spiked, and she realized that despite the fear, despite the danger, she wanted to be here, wanted to face whatever this world demanded of her. The older man continued, voice cold and deliberate. "You will learn quickly. Observe. Listen. And remember. Every misstep, every hesitation, every question, could cost more than you are prepared to give." Ngozi's stomach churned, but her resolve solidified. I understand," she said, trying to sound stronger than she felt. "I'll do whatever it takes to survive." Bose's gaze met hers, dark and intense. "Good," he murmured. "Because from now on, your life is not your own. Every choice you make, every move you take matters. And one mistake could change everything. Her breath caught in her throat. "One mistake," she whispered. "Yes," he said softly, leaning closer so only she could hear. "And you are already being tested. By staying, by following, by even daring to exist in my world. You've already passed the first step. But the true test has only just begun." She looked around the room, at the men whose eyes seemed to pierce through her, at Bose whose presence was both comforting and terrifying, and realized that she was no longer just a girl chasing a dream. She was a player in a dangerous game, one that demanded courage, cunning, and perhaps even surrender. And as the night stretched on, shadows twisting in corners, secrets whispered in hushed tones, and the weight of the unknown pressed down on her, Ngozi knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nothing would ever be the same again. Ngozi could barely breathe as she followed Bose through the dimly lit corridors of the building. The hum of quiet conversations, the shuffle of footsteps, the occasional clink of metal. It all felt like she had stepped inside a different world, one alive with danger, secrets, and unseen power. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to escape the gravity of this world she had stumbled into. Yet, each step she took, she felt an inexplicable pull, a combination of fear and fascination that she couldn't resist. "This is where decisions are made," Bose murmured, his voice low, almost a growl. "Every alliance, every betrayal, every deal passes through this room. And everyone who enters must understand one thing. Weakness is punished. Mistakes are not forgiven." Ngozi swallowed hard. "Mistakes," she repeated, the word echoing ominously in her mind. She could feel the weight of it pressing down on her chest. "And what happens to people who make mistakes?" Bose's gaze darkened, shadowed by some hidden emotion, and his lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. "They disappear," he said softly, almost casually, as if naming something ordinary. "Sometimes from the world, sometimes from my memory. Both outcomes are undesirable." Her pulse hammered. She had never felt fear like this, sharp and alive, but alongside it was a thrill she couldn't explain. It terrified her, and yet, in some dark corner of her mind, she wanted more. She wanted to understand, to survive, to prove that she belonged here despite knowing that every misstep could be fatal. They entered a large room, the air thick with tension and authority. Men and women alike were seated around a massive table, maps, documents, and laptops spread out in meticulous order. Every eye shifted toward them, a sharp, almost predatory focus that made her skin crawl. One of the men, seated near the center, spoke with a voice smooth and commanding. "Bose," he said, "you brought her." Bose nodded once. "Yes. She is capable," he said simply, eyes flicking to Ngozi. "She will learn quickly or she will leave. That is her choice." Ngozi's stomach knotted. The words hung in the air like a challenge she wasn't sure she was ready to accept. Her voice trembled when she spoke. I want to learn. I'll do whatever it takes." Bose's eyes softened slightly, almost imperceptibly, and he leaned closer so she could hear him. "Good. Courage and curiosity. Those are the traits that will keep you alive. But know this, survival requires more than bravery. It requires cunning. It requires subtlety. And it requires understanding me." Her throat went dry. "Understanding you?" He smirked faintly. "Yes, the part of me most people never see. You've glimpsed it already. That darkness you sense. That is just the surface. The deeper you go, the more you'll see. And it will challenge you, terrify you, and perhaps entice you." Ngozi felt a flush creep up her neck. "Entice me," she echoed, heart racing in ways that had nothing to do with fear. He leaned back, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. "Yes, entice, fascinate, fear, desire, all at once. Most people can't handle it. Most people would collapse. You may surprise me." The room grew colder somehow, the weight of every unseen eye pressing down on her. She realized that every move she made, every word she spoke, was being measured, analyzed, and judged. Her mind screamed at her to leave, to escape, but her body remained rooted in place, caught in the magnetic pull of a world she barely understood but was desperate to survive. A sharp rap at the door made them all turn. A young man entered quickly, face pale, glancing toward Bose nervously. "Sir, there's an issue with one of the territories," he said quickly. "A rival group attempted to move in tonight. It's small but they—" Bose's hand shot up, stopping him. "Explain later." "The girl first," he said, voice low and commanding. "Observe, Ngozi. This is the reality of the world you've chosen to step into. Danger is always present. And one wrong move can cost more than you are willing to pay." Her heart raced. I understand," she whispered, though part of her mind screamed that understanding was not enough. Bose's eyes softened for the briefest moment. "Good. You must internalize that. Not just hear it. Feel it. Survive it. And maybe, endure it." The young man retreated quickly, leaving them in a silence thick with anticipation. The older men resumed their discussions, voices hushed but sharp, words slicing through the air with calculated precision. Ngozi watched, taking in every detail. The way decisions were made, the weight of authority in every gesture, the quiet power that radiated from the room. She realized that this was more than she had imagined. This was life at the edge of everything. Bose leaned toward her again, voice soft, almost intimate. "Notice how each person moves, how each word is measured. That is survival. Observation is as important as action. Learn it. Internalize it. And never ever forget. Trust is earned, not given. One misstep, one wrong glance, one careless word, and the world you've entered will consume you." Her chest tightened. "Trust earned," she repeated, as if repeating it aloud would make it real. I think I understand." He nodded once. "Good. That is the first step. You will make mistakes. Everyone does. But your reaction to those mistakes will define you. And remember." He let the word linger, dangerous and heavy. "I am watching." Her pulse spiked, and a flush rose in her cheeks. She knew, in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating, that she had captured his attention. That he would test her, push her, manipulate her fears and desires, and she was powerless to resist. And yet, somewhere deep inside she wanted it. Wanted to prove herself, to survive, to endure. The rest of the night passed in a blur of lessons, subtle threats, and careful observation. Each word, each glance, each gesture was a test. And by the end, Ngozi felt a strange mixture of exhaustion, exhilaration, and fear. She was no longer just a girl chasing a dream. She had stepped fully into a world of power, danger, and desire. And the man beside her, calm, calculating, and magnetic, was at the center of it all. As they left the building, the night air hit her like a shock. Her hands trembled, not just from the cold, but from the weight of everything she had witnessed. She had survived the first trial. But she knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The darkness of Bose's world was vast, and the games had only just begun. Bose glanced at her, eyes glinting in the neon light. "You did well tonight," he said softly. "But remember, tomorrow the real tests begin." She swallowed, heart racing. I'll be ready," she whispered, though a part of her wondered if anyone could ever truly be ready for a world like his. And as they walked into the night, shadows stretching long and ominous around them, Ngozi realized that she had crossed a line from which there would be no return. She was no longer just a girl chasing dreams. She was a participant in a dangerous game, one where survival demanded courage, cunning, and perhaps even surrender. And she was both terrified and inexplicably drawn to it. The following night, Seoul felt heavier. The rain had returned, drumming against the streets like an ominous warning, and the neon signs blurred into streaks of red and gold. Ngozi had barely slept, replaying every word, every glance from Bose and the men she had encountered the previous night. She knew instinctively that her life had shifted irreversibly. Fear had settled in her chest, but it was tinged with a strange exhilaration, the kind she had never felt before. Bose had summoned her to the same location, his message brief, Tonight you learn more. The ambiguity made her stomach churn, but she forced herself to move, to obey. She didn't know why she was following, only that some part of her wanted to prove she could. That part of her, small and stubborn, wanted to survive his world, no matter the cost. When she arrived, the heavy black car was waiting, just as before. The two men in suits flanked the entrance like silent predators. She climbed in, her fingers gripping the seat tightly. Bose was already there, composed, almost serene, though the tension radiating from him was palpable. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice low, as if the simple answer could determine her fate. I think so," she said, though doubt fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird. "Think," he repeated, dark eyes locking onto hers. "You don't think in my world. You act. You survive. Remember that." The car moved swiftly through the rain-slick streets, silence settling between them like a living thing. Finally, they arrived at a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The building was dimly lit, shadows pooling in every corner. Ngozi's heart pounded, each beat a warning that she was about to step even further into the unknown. Inside, the room was alive with tension. A dozen men circled a single figure, a rival who had attempted to intrude on Bose's territory the night before. The air was thick with authority, threat, and an unspoken law that everyone present understood. Bose's hand brushed lightly against her shoulder. "Observe," he whispered, voice low. "Every gesture, every word, every hesitation tells a story. That is the way of my world. Learn it, internalize it, and never make the mistake of underestimating it." She watched, frozen and fascinated, as the rival was forced to kneel before Bose. His calm, controlled demeanor masked the lethal potential underneath. A flick of his finger, a sharp word, and the man flinched, terrified. It was a performance of power, but it was real. Ngozi felt bile rise in her throat. The reality of Bose's world was far more terrifying than she had imagined. "You see," Bose murmured, voice a whisper meant only for her. "This is life and death. Subtlety is survival. Strength is control. And courage is everything." She nodded, trying to steady herself, but the fear and fascination tangled in her chest. I understand," she whispered, though the words felt inadequate. Bose's eyes darkened, intense and magnetic. "Do you?" he asked, voice dropping lower, almost a growl. "Or are you only pretending?" I'm not pretending," she said firmly, though her voice shook slightly. "I want to learn. I want to survive." "Good," he said, a faint smile touching his lips. "But surviving isn't just about watching. You must act. Observe, understand, then move. Hesitate, and it could cost you everything." A sudden movement from one of the men caught her attention, a subtle gesture, a flicker of intent. She realized, with a jolt, that everyone in the room was constantly evaluating, predicting, and controlling each other. Every small motion carried meaning. Every glance was a threat or a test. Bose leaned closer again. "Do you see it now? This is the rhythm of my world. Danger is constant. Trust is fragile. And weakness is fatal." Her chest tightened. I think I understand now," she said, swallowing hard. The truth was, she did understand, perhaps too well. Fear, excitement, and adrenaline coursed through her veins in a way that was almost intoxicating. The rival was dismissed with a simple wave of Bose's hand. He stumbled to the floor, retreating into the shadows, and the room's tension lifted slightly. Ngozi exhaled a shaky breath. She had survived, watched, and absorbed. And yet, she felt the pull of something deeper, something more dangerous. Bose himself. "Look at me," he said suddenly, and she obeyed, eyes locking with his. "Do you feel the weight of what just happened?" Yes," she admitted, heart racing. "It's terrifying." "Good," he said softly, voice almost intimate. "It should terrify you. Fear sharpens the mind, heightens perception, and strengthens the will. But it also excites." Her breath caught. "Excites. The word echoed in her mind, dangerous and forbidden. Her pulse raced, mixing fear and desire in a way that left her dizzy. She realized with a shock that she had never experienced anything like this. Bose's gaze softened just slightly, enough to make her pulse spike. "You did well tonight," he murmured. "But remember, this is only the beginning. The real challenges are yet to come." Ngozi swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. I'll be ready," she said, though a part of her feared she would never truly be ready for his world. "Perhaps," he said, eyes dark, calculating, magnetic. "But one thing is certain. You are no longer just an observer. You are part of it now. Your choices, your courage, your mistakes. They all matter. And one wrong move could change everything." Her hands trembled, not just from fear, but from the weight of understanding. She realized fully that her life had been irrevocably altered. The girl who had come to Seoul chasing dreams, naive and hopeful, had stepped into a storm of power, danger, and desire. And in that storm there was no turning back. As they left the warehouse, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and glimmering. The city felt alive, dangerous, and intoxicating. Ngozi walked beside Bose, heart racing, mind reeling, yet a strange, undeniable pull kept her close to him. She was terrified, exhilarated, and inexplicably drawn to the chaos that surrounded him. And in that moment, she understood the truth of his world. Survival demanded courage, cunning, and surrender. She was ready, or at least she convinced herself she was. But deep down, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The night had only just begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The following night, the city of Seoul seemed almost alive with menace. The streets glistened under the faint glow of neon lights, and every shadow felt like it could conceal a threat. Ngozi's hands shook as she followed Bose through the alleyways, the memory of the warehouse still burning in her mind. She had survived her first true test, yet something inside her told her the real challenge had only just begun. "You feel it, don't you?" Bose asked quietly, his voice low and smooth, yet carrying an edge that made her shiver. "The weight of your choices, the gravity of my world, and the dangerous pull of me." She swallowed, heart racing. I feel it," she admitted. Her voice trembled, but not with fear alone. There was something else, a curious, dangerous thrill she couldn't ignore. Bose's eyes softened briefly, an almost imperceptible glint of something human behind the lethal calm. "Good. You must understand that fear and fascination are intertwined here. They are inseparable. They sharpen the mind, awaken the senses, and reveal truths." "What truths?" she whispered, feeling her pulse spike. "The truth that your life is no longer your own," he said simply. "Every step you take, every choice you make matters. Every misstep has consequences. And sometimes, survival demands sacrifices you never imagined." Her chest tightened. "Sacrifices," she repeated, almost to herself. What kind of sacrifices?" Bose leaned closer, his gaze locking onto hers. "The kind that test your courage, your desire, your resolve, and sometimes, your heart." Her stomach flipped. Desire, heart. She had known fear, tension, adrenaline, but never anything like this. The way his words pressed on her, pulled at her, made her pulse race in ways that were both terrifying and intoxicating. She realized, with a sudden clarity, that she was utterly ensnared. They arrived at another building, smaller, almost hidden, but emanating a silent authority. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with power and danger. Men and women moved with calculated precision, eyes sharp, expressions unreadable. This was no ordinary operation. This was the inner circle. Bose led her to a private room. Inside, a single chair awaited. "Sit," he commanded softly. "Tonight, you will face the ultimate test." Her heart pounded, and she hesitated. "Test?" "Yes," he said, voice dropping to a whisper. "This is the moment where survival, courage, and temptation collide. What you do now will define everything that follows." She obeyed, sitting carefully, aware of every movement, every glance. Bose stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Do you trust me?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. I think I do," she said finally, though her mind raced with doubts and questions. "Good," he said, leaning so close that she could feel the warmth of his breath. "Trust is fragile. One mistake and it shatters. But trust, when earned, is powerful. And you have already earned some measure of it." Her pulse raced, mixing fear and something deeper, more dangerous. What happens now?" Bose's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. "Now you will see the true measure of my world. You will witness decisions, power, and the consequences of desire." The door opened and two men entered, carrying a single package. Bose gestured for them to place it on the table. With a swift motion, he opened it, revealing a set of documents, photographs, and a small, sleek knife. Ngozi's eyes widened. The knife gleamed under the dim light, a symbol of danger, authority, and threat. "This," Bose said, voice calm but deadly, "is what survival demands. Decisions, action, courage, and sometimes, sacrifice." He leaned closer to her again. "Do you see now? Your choices brought you here. Your courage, your curiosity, your defiance led you to this moment. And now, you must act." Her hands trembled as she reached for the documents, realizing that the responsibility, the stakes, and the danger were hers to confront. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet every fiber of her being held her in place. She was no longer a naive girl chasing dreams. She was a participant, a player in a world where power, fear, and desire collided. Bose watched her, eyes dark, intense, and magnetic. "Decide wisely," he whispered. "One wrong move, and everything changes." She studied the papers, photographs, and knife, her mind racing. The room seemed to pulse with tension, the air thick with anticipation. She realized then that survival was not about avoiding danger. It was about facing it, understanding it, and mastering it. And somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "I can do this." Must. With deliberate, steady hands, she made her choices. Each action, each decision was calculated, precise, and courageous. She felt the thrill of danger, the pull of authority, and the intoxicating presence of Bose beside her. And when the final move was made, a tense silence filled the room. Bose studied her carefully, then leaned back, a slow, approving smile crossing his lips. "Well done," he said softly. "You survived. You understood. And perhaps, you even impressed me." Her chest heaved, a mix of exhaustion, relief, and adrenaline. She had faced the darkness, the danger, and the unknown, and she had emerged intact. But more than that, she had discovered a part of herself she had never known. Courage that thrived under pressure, intelligence sharpened by fear, and desire intertwined with survival. Bose stepped closer, hand brushing hers lightly. "Remember this night," he said, voice low, intimate. "It marks the beginning of something you cannot turn back from. You are no longer just Ngozi, the girl chasing dreams. You are part of my world now. And my world changes everything." Her pulse raced, mind spinning. She realized then that she had crossed a line from which there was no return. She had survived, but she had also been irrevocably changed. Fear, desire, power, and fascination coursed through her veins. I understand," she whispered, voice trembling. I'm ready for whatever comes next." Bose's eyes glinted, dark and magnetic. "Good," he said softly, almost a whisper meant only for her. "Because from now on, there is no turning back. And you will learn that the darkness is not something to fear alone. It is something to embrace. And maybe, something to desire." She swallowed hard, heart pounding. She had faced the edge, stared into the abyss, and survived. And somehow, impossibly, she wanted more. The city outside remained indifferent, neon lights flickering over rain-soaked streets, shadows stretching long and alive. But inside, in that quiet, tense room, A bond had formed, forged in fear, danger, and desire. And as she looked at Bose, dark, dangerous, and magnetic, she realized one undeniable truth. Her life would never be the same. She had stepped fully into the darkness of Seoul's underworld, into a storm of power and danger, and somehow she wanted it. The night ended, but the game had only begun. And somewhere deep inside, a thrilling, dangerous thought settled in her mind. This is exactly where I was meant to be.